I offer my love and my pranams at Bhagavan's lotus feet. And I thank you very much for inviting me to share with you some experiences. As we grow older, it seems like we have an opportunity to get rid of some of the karma. Swami gives us all opportunities to get rid of this karma that we have, and much of it is manifested through physical problems. My wife had an interesting experience a few years ago. In Prashanti, on Swami's birthday, she was going to the stadium early in the mornings to get a good seat. And she got the little gate up by the general hospital, and the gate was closed. And then when finally the word came that the gate could be opened, she was standing right in front of the gate, and the Sevadal opened the gate on her foot, and her foot got trapped between a little wall which is there and the gate, big iron gate, and she broke her foot, 2 bones in the foot. Now, of course, immediately you can say, oh, look at what the Sevadal did. What a careless guy. He should have seen that. He shouldn't have done that. But then again, when you start to analyze what had happened, first of all, it happened on the 23rd of December, in November, which is like a present from Swami to my wife, but not exactly a good present. And then she was only about 50 feet from, or 50 meters from the entrance to the hospital, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and so they take her on a stretcher over to the hospital. And then, can you believe it, 5 o'clock in the morning on Swami's birthday, there's an orthopedic specialist from the United States on duty that set the bones and put her in a cast and got her out in front in a wheelchair so she could watch Swami go by in his car when he went over to the stadium. So she had his darshan, not too much pain. And then, when Swami came back from the stadium, she was still sitting in the wheelchair in front of the hospital and got another darshan. And so then we were in this process of having the foot heal. And of course, I got an opportunity to serve her, which she'd been serving me for something like, 50 years or something. And so then I got a chance to do a little bit of service. But the whole process of healing was about 6 weeks before she could go and have another x-ray to see if the cast could be taken off. And there was a doctor there from Brazil who accompanied her to the hospital, and I went too, but I couldn't go in the ladies section. And so this lady doctor was saying, well, now we're going to tell this doctor that he's got to take the x-ray before he takes off the cast, because obviously you're not going to take the cast off and then find out that the bone still hasn't healed. But they went in, and this old doctor there, he just took his saw out and he took the cast off before he even thought about taking an x-ray. And they were trying to explain to him that he shouldn't do that. But finally, after he took the cast off, they convinced him that he should take another x-ray. So then he took another x-ray, and the bones were still separated. They hadn't healed. And so then we were in a big dilemma, because this old guy, he wasn't going to put another cast on because he didn't want to admit that he was mistaken. And so we were thinking, well, we're going to have to go to Bangalore, and then who are we going to look for? We don't even know any doctors in Bangalore. And this is a mess, and look what's happened, and India, and you know how you think. But so then I consulted with a friend of mine who was another doctor who was there in the ashram, and he says, he said, just today, an orthopedic specialist from another part of the United States, from South Carolina, had just arrived, Dr. Patel. And he's staying here in the same building where you are. I'll tell him to come by your room tonight and see your wife. And so Dr. Patel comes, and he looks at the x-rays and the separated bones, and he says, no problem. He said, I just brought 50 shoes, special shoes, for patients that have broken ankles, just like your wife. But he said, I left them all at the super specialties hospital in Bangalore, except for one pair. But it's for a child, but maybe it'll fit your wife. Just a minute, I'll go look. And he goes down and gets the one pair of shoes that he didn't leave in Bangalore, and he brings it up and shows it to my wife, puts it on her foot, perfect, you know, because she's little, and so it was a perfect fit. And he says, this is what we're using now instead of the cast, because it lets the skin rejuvenate, and it's a special shoe that holds the foot in place. And so he says, your wife will be fine, this is perfect, this is the treatment that we're using now. So imagine after all this disaster, Swami fixed everything. So anyway, then maybe another, I don't know, a week or two passed, and so we're thinking about going back home. And I called the airline and asked them if they had any reservations, and they said no, everything was booked for I don't know how many months, and if I wanted to be on a waiting list. And I said, well, I don't know, I just named a date, like I said 27th, I think it was 27th of January or something. And they says, oh, well, there's 108 people on the waiting list. So that was a nice number. So I says, okay, put me on that day for 2. And so I go to darshan, and then Swami in the darshan, he comes up to me, he says, when are you leaving? And I said, oh, Swami, I said, we're just on a waiting list for the 27th of January. And then Swami has this real cute little smile, you know, it's sort of like, you know, like I know. But it was, he didn't say anything, but he just gave me this really cute little smile. And I knew immediately that he'd fixed something. So I went back to the room and I called the airline and I said, you know, I'm on a waiting list for the 27th of January, Mr. Behner and his wife. And the lady, she says, oh, she said, you know, she said, you're so lucky. She said, it's just been confirmed. So Swami, you know, he does these little tricks with I don't know how he does it, but he makes the computer whirl, and all of a sudden, you know, you get spun up to the front line. And so as we go through these different processes of getting rid of karma, I had a few episodes myself with a couple of operations and another thing that happened in 2010. I got this tremendous infection. I ate outside the ashram, which I never do. But this friend had invited us to a birthday party or something, and I thought, oh, I should go. And then they served some food that had been prepared outside, and my wife said, don't eat it. But of course I said, no, I have to be polite, I'll just eat a little. And I got this really good infection, and it was actually in the appendix. And so then I was feeling tremendous pain. And so I thought, well, I'll take some bicarbonate of soda and it'll go away. I think I took about 4 bicarbonates and it didn't go away. And then this friend of mine showed up and he said, oh, I've got my car downstairs. I can take you to the hospital immediately. And that was the last place I wanted to go. But I couldn't get out of it because he was a doctor and because he was a friend. And if I said no, he'd say I was nuts. So I went to the hospital, and then they put me in the hospital and immediately started giving me an antibiotic drip, which I don't like antibiotics either, but anyway, I was getting that. I hope there's no doctors here, I don't want to offend anybody. But anyway, and it was a good treatment because the appendix were almost bursting. And so then the doctors also from the US, Dr. Goldstein, Dr. Reddy, they'd come and visit me every morning in the hospital. And also a good friend of mine from Argentina, he was running this scanning machine, you know, and they'd scan me every day to find out, you know, if the appendix had broken yet. It was just dripping all over the place, but it hadn't broken. But anyway, and then Dr. Goldstein and Dr. Reddy would run over and see Swami, and they'd say, oh, we've got to operate on John immediately because, you know, his appendix are almost bursting. And Swami would say, oh, wait, Or then after a few days of suffering, I was really suffering, then Swami said, oh, there's this expert who's coming from the US. Why don't we wait until he comes and get another opinion? And in the meantime, I'm just dying, and my stomach is swollen up like I was pregnant because, when you have a big infection, then, and then I can't sleep at night. One night they decided they wanted to measure my stomach every hour to find out if it was growing or if it was getting smaller. It was terrible. And all this time I'm calling out to Swami, I thought maybe he'd come to the hospital and do something, materialize vibhuti or something to take me out of this terrible misery and this pain that I was going through. And the other part was that the doctors from India, the doctors that were there in the super specialties hospital, they thought maybe with antibiotics they could cure the whole thing. But I wasn't getting any better. And yet at the same time, the other doctors from the US, they wanted to operate. And so maybe Swami didn't want to create a problem between the two of them and say, oh, these guys are right and the other guys are wrong. And so he just let me suffer. But then, finally, the expert from the US came, Hari Konjivaram. Many of you may know him. And he's an internalist, really a very expert in his field. And so he came and he looked at me, oh my God, he says, you've got to operate this right away. And so he and Goldstein and Reddy, and they all ran over to Swami. Again, he said, Swami, we've got to operate on John. His appendix have almost burst, or they've already burst, or I don't know, who knows what. And then Swami is looking at them and he says, Swami says, what do you know? I'm doing everything. Oh my God. Their mouths came open. He says, what do we know? And Swami's doing everything? And they didn't know what to do then. So then the next day, Hari came over to the hospital and he said to me, he says, well, you might as well go back to the ashram because Swami's doing everything. You might as well suffer in your room or die in your room or whatever you're going to do. And so he gave me a ride in his car and went back to the ashram. I still had the infection. And so then, but another friend of mine was there, a doctor from Venezuela, and he had a machine which is called a skill. And the skill machine is able to diagnose the exact, what the infection is. In other words, the bacteria, the name of it, and so on. And then what it does, it puts in a vibration into the body that kills it. So he zapped this bacteria, this infection that I had, in about 4 1.5-hour sessions, and I didn't have any infection, and I was in perfect shape without having my appendix removed. So this kind of thing, of course, Swami knew this, he was doing all of this, and he knew it all, but when you look back at this and you say, well, why did I have to have this experience? And you think, well, in my life, I had never thought about Swami 24 hours a day for 11 straight days. But when I had this infection, I sure did, I'll tell you. And so this is giving you an opportunity to experience God through pain and to just think of God only and nothing else. And it's not like you're thinking about him with a lot of love. Not that. You're thinking about him because you want him to come and take your pain away. But still you're thinking about him all the time, and you're calling to him and you're asking him to come and help you. So it's an interesting situation. And then also, I had another experience just a year later. You'd think you'd learn your lesson, with these things, but then after Swami had left his body, I got another infection, but this time in the intestine, and I got gangrene in the intestine, and then I was really in trouble. And I went to super specialties hospital, and they said, oh, we don't have any internistas. I don't know how you say it in English. But anyway, we don't have anybody here that can do this kind of operation. You better go to Bangalore. And so they sent me in the ambulance to Bangalore. That's another experience that you don't want to have, because those ambulances, they don't have any shock absorbers, and they don't even have a belt that you can, you know, when you lie on that little bed in the ambulance, well, every time you go around a corner or you hit a bump, forget it. And then by that, you're also in so much pain. Oh, it's the worst thing you could possibly do. Take a taxi, I'll tell you. But anyway, so after 4 hours, I arrive at the hospital, and I'm almost dead from the ride, not from the whatever I had, from the gangrene. And so then I told the doctor, I said, let me recover tonight and just give me a pain pill and let me try to sleep, and then tomorrow you can operate. So in the morning they cut me open, and they cut out about 1 meter of my intestine that had gangrene. But not only that, when I woke up, the doctor told me, he says, oh, he said, and we took out your appendix. And I said, what? I says, were they infected? Or was it infected? No, but we just, you know, that's a bonus. What? After Swami had saved my appendix, and look, you think I cut it out when I was asleep? Oh my God. Well, you know, that's allopathic medicine for you. I hope there's no doctors. But anyway, so these are the things that we go through, though, in terms of our health when we get older, and we get these tests that Swami gives us, and he's always testing us to try to find out, you know, how much we believe in him. Now, sometimes we pass these tests with flying colors, but other times we don't do so good. Now, I want to tell you one I really flunked. There was, in 1999, there was an education conference, and so they told us, well, this would be a good time to invite the ministers of education from different countries so they know the program of human values, and then maybe you can, you know, get this further developed with the ministries of education in your countries. And so I was thinking, oh, well, maybe it's a good opportunity to invite the Minister of Education from Cuba, because she's a member of this political party that rules the country, and then she can tell Fidel Castro what a great organization the Sai organization is, and then maybe he'll let us register the Sai organization in Cuba, because we were in the doghouse. He'd shut it down a few years earlier. Well, prior to this thought about inviting the Minister of Education from Cuba to Prashanti, just prior to this, Swami gave a talk to the students in the university. And in this talk, Swami told about an incident when he was a little boy, when he was about 14 years old. This happened just after the Second World War, or maybe he was 16, I don't know. But there was a family from Bangalore was very, very devoted to Swami. And they used to sleep under a tree in the old mandir, and they used to clean the compound and bring firewood and this kind of stuff to try to serve Swami. And then they had two sons, and then the father and the mother that would stay there in Prashanti. But then Swami told them, he says, you've got to go back to Bangalore, because now the rainy season is coming and I don't have any place for you to stay, and you can't stay under the tree, you're going to get soaked. So better go back to your home in Bangalore and then come back after the rains. So they had to go, and they went back to Bangalore. Now this couple, they had an older daughter, and she was, she got married to a German guy, and she'd had a couple of children with him, and they were living in Germany when the Second World War started. And then the bombings came, and the school where the children were studying was bombed, and the mother ran out and she looked all over for her kids. She couldn't find them. She looked for her husband. She couldn't find them. They were all separated, or she thought maybe the children were dead in the school. Her husband, she couldn't find him. And finally she escaped from Berlin and was able to get out and went to Canada or someplace. And then she met another fella, and I got married, but it didn't work out. And she went to Malaysia, and then she met some other guy, and that didn't work out either. And then she decided to come back to Bangalore and visit parents. And so comes to Bangalore and sees her brothers and her mother and father, and they have that family reunion. And so her parents are telling her, you know, God is alive. God is in Prashanti. Come with us. We're going to go see Swami. We're going to go see Sathya Sai Baba. And so she's not too spiritual, you know. She's had a sort of a worldly life. But anyway, to humor her parents, she goes to Prashanti with her parents. And they're there for 3 days. And she sees this young guy, this little boy running around, you know, with afro hair. And her parents are saying, this is God. But he doesn't say anything to her. And you know, she's just saying, well, my poor parents, you know. They're affected or something. And so, but the last day that they're there, just before leaving to go back to Bangalore, Swami comes up to her and he says, go to Chennai, go to Madras. It was Madras in those days. Go to Madras. And that's all he told her, just to go to Madras. And so they went back to Bangalore, and when they got back to Bangalore, her parents said, well, when are you going to Madras? And she said, what? Are you kidding? I don't know anybody in Madras. I've come to visit you. I don't want to go to Madras. No, but Swami told you to go to Madras. And she says, but oh, please, I don't know anybody. I'm not going. Forget it. But finally, after a few days of nagging and so on, her mother said to her, dear, if you never do anything else for me in your life, please go to Madras because Swami told you. So finally, just to humor her parents, they went down to the train station. She bought a ticket on the train to go to Madras. She went to Madras. She gets out, looks around on the platform, doesn't see anybody, doesn't see anything. She goes over to the window where they buy the tickets. She bought a ticket on the same train to go back to Bangalore. She said, well, I've been to Madras, now I'm going back. She gets on the train, starts back. And she was in one compartment, but I don't know, she didn't like it, and she went to another compartment. There was a guy in there with a couple of kids. He was smoking a cigarette, and he offered her a cigarette. And so she started smoking. And so they were just talking, chit-chat, and the guy asked her, he said, well, where are you staying in Bangalore? And she says, oh, well, I stay in the military compound because my first husband, he was a military guy. And so then the guy says, well, do you know anybody there? Do you know a lady by the name of Emily? And she says, well, I'm Emily. And then she looked at the guy, and she looked at the kids. It was her husband from Germany and her 2 children. And then they started embracing and screaming and laughing and crying. And the conductor came by to see what was happening. But so then Swami said, you know, he said, when I tell you to do something and you do it, something will happen. But if you ignore what I tell you, well, nothing's going to happen. Now, I didn't hear this story, unfortunately. But so then I asked Swami, I said, Swami, should I go to Cuba and invite the Minister of Education to come to this education conference? And Swami said, oh yes, very good idea. And so they, well, Swami, when should I go? And I said, when should we go? Because I told my wife was going with me. And so Swami pretends to think for a minute, and then he says, oh, he said, go at the end of the year. And so then after, when the interview is finishing and we're leaving, he says, and I'll be with you. And I thought, you're always with me. Yeah, what a crazy thing to say, you know. But then I called the Minister of Education and set up the appointment with her for the 18th of December because she was going to go on Christmas vacation. And so we bought our tickets and we're leaving on the 16th of December to arrive just one day before and then go see her and give her the invitation to this Congress, a conference of human values. But something like the 13th or the 12th of December, a little boy escapes from Cuba, Ilian. And he escapes and the boat tips over and his mother is drowned, and he gets in an inner tube or something, and the Coast Guard from the US picks the boy up, and they take him to his grandparents' house in Miami. And then Fidel says, I want that boy back. His father is here in Cuba. And George Bush says, I'm not giving that boy back because his grandchildren are here in Miami. And so then Fidel says, well, if I get my hands on a gringo, I'm going to trade him for this little boy. And so then there we are with these tickets, and at that time I only had a US passport. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I wonder how these Cuban jails are. And what's going to happen? What'll happen if I go? And at that time, it was also, I think it still is, I don't think that US citizens are allowed to travel to Cuba legally, unless you're in the CIA or something. But anyway, so there we are with these tickets, and I said, oh my God, what should I do? What a test. But then I decided I didn't want to go into a Cuban jail, and I didn't want to find out what Swami meant when he says, I'll be with you. So I didn't go. And so then when I went back to India and I told Swami, he says, Swami, I didn't go to Cuba. He says, oh, no, don't go to Cuba. He says, Fidel Castro, a very bad man, very difficult. But you see, Swami doesn't say, you failed to pass the test. No, he doesn't say it like that. He won't tell you that. He says, oh, no, don't go to Cuba. No. He'll try to make you feel good, but you didn't pass the test, you see. So when we have an opportunity to do something, to do the right thing, you have to follow what Swami, what his guidance is. What is his guidance? And it isn't always going to be the easiest thing. Sometimes it's going to be the hardest thing to follow his guidance. But you know what his promise is also. His promise is that Dharma will protect Dharma. Right action protects right action. Now, once I had a very good example of that when we were traveling from Madurai to Kodaikanal. And on the highway, the taxi driver was looking right in front of him was two young boys on a bicycle. And they lost their balance in front of the taxi. And the driver tried to avoid hitting them, but he couldn't, and he hit the boys, and they were lying out in the street bleeding. And we got out of the taxi, there were 5 of us. And fortunately, we had some vibhuti with us, and we put vibhuti on the wounds, and then we put the boys in the taxi, and we took them to a hospital. It was close by, a little hospital out in the middle of nowhere. And 3 of our passengers in the taxi, they stayed back on the highway, and they caught a ride up the Kodaikanal with another taxi that was passing. And 2 of us stayed at the hospital, and the doctor was there, and he was cleaning the wounds and sewing up. One boy had a big cut on the forehead, and the other one on the leg. And then while we were there, 2 cars filled with neighbors, with the parents, with the uncles and aunts, and everybody arrived, and they all got into this little operating room to see the boys. I don't know how the doctor could operate, but there was about 25 people in the room, and the doctor was still trying to do his job. And anyway, they got the boys stitched up, and we saw that everything was fine, nobody died. And so we went out to get our taxi and go on our way, and we discovered the taxi wasn't there. We started asking, well, where's the taxi? Well, the taxi's in jail, and the driver's in jail. I said, oh my God. And where's the jail? Well, it's down here by the police station. So they showed us where to go. We went down and we found a taxi in the compound of the police station. And we said, well, we want to get our suitcases. And they said, no, sorry, that's evidence. So we had to argue for about an hour with a policeman to get our bags out of the taxi. And the suitcases of our friends also. And the driver, he had to be in the jail because the law is in India, if you have an accident and somebody's hurt, you have to go to jail if you're the driver. It doesn't matter if you have insurance or what. So anyway, when we got to Kodaikanal, we decided, all of us, to write a letter to the judge and tell him what a wonderful person this taxi driver was, how he tried to avoid the accident, how he stayed back and took the boys to the hospital, and he should have been given an award instead of thrown in jail. We wrote this letter and we signed it, and then we sent it with another taxi driver to the judge in Madurai. And the judge, when he received the letter, he immediately released this driver from jail. Now, here the driver had followed right action. He had followed his Dharma, and this Dharma had protected him. He was released. Of course, we don't know what his karma was. Maybe he would have been in jail for 20 years or for 10 years or whatever because of his karma. But because he did the right thing, God's grace came in and protected him. So we should always remember this, that when we are given these tests by the Lord, that we have to do the right thing. And the right thing will protect us even though it's the most difficult. And here I'm saying this and I didn't pass the test. But another time I did pass a test, and I think I told this story the last time I was here, but I'll tell it again because it's one of my favorites, one of my favorite experiences, and then we'll wrap this up so that you people can go to sleep tonight. One year when I went to India, I went for 3 weeks, and this time I didn't take Rosie with me. I usually took my wife with me on these trips, but I was there for 3 weeks, and then I checked my reservation to go home, and they said, "Oh, you don't have a reservation. You want to be on a waiting list." And I was sort of confused why I didn't have a reservation, because I reconfirmed when I was coming. And so then I went to darshan, and in the afternoon, and then Swami came up to me and he says, "When are you leaving?" And I said, "Swami, I don't know." I said, "They've canceled my reservation." And then Swami smiled and he says, "Oh, I know." He said, "I'll tell you when to leave." And so then I go, "Oh, wow, that's great. Maybe another week's vacation. That's great." So I called my office and I said, "Hey, I'm delayed." I says, "I'll be there pretty soon." And so the week went by, but Swami didn't say anything. Then another week went by and he didn't say anything. And so I'm calling the office and making excuses. And then I found out that Swami was going to Madras. And so I went with Swami to Madras. So I asked him if I should go, and he says, "Oh, yes." And I thought, well, he'd tell me to leave, but he didn't. And so we were in Madras for 10 days, and then we came back, and we were in Whitefield for a while, and then he said he was going to, I heard he was going to Kodaikanal. So I asked Swami if I could go to Kodaikanal with him. He said, "Oh, yes, yes, come." And so I thought he would tell me to go, but he didn't. So then I go to Kodaikanal. We were in Kodaikanal for 6 weeks, and he didn't tell me to go. I had 5 interviews during that time, and every time I would ask him if I should leave, and he says, "Oh, no, wait," or I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." He'd give me some crazy answer, but he never told me to go back. And then, when we went back to Whitefield, and I was there for about 2 more weeks. I'd been gone, I think, 2.5 months or something like this, and I was, calling New York every week, telling them, or every few days, telling them that I was delayed and I wasn't going to quit, but I didn't know when I was going back, and this kind of thing. And so then I got a letter by courier from the company, and they said, "You're fired. You don't have to come back." So then I tried to show the letter to Swami. "Hey, Swami, hey." And then he just ignored me completely. Of course, he'd walk by with his nose in the air, or he'd talk to somebody else, but he wouldn't pay any attention to me. But at night, I was going into his house, and I was listening to the discourses at night. And so one night, Swami telling his students, he said, "The avatars don't always tell the devotee exactly what they're supposed to do. Sometimes the avatars, they just give a hint. And then the devotee has to be astute enough to realize that it's a hint, and also to be able to interpret it." Oh my God, And so I come out of Swami's house after that little talk or little discourse, and I was sort of praying and in front of Swami's door, I said, well, Swami, if you send me some kind of a hint as to when I'm supposed to go back or what I'm supposed to do, if I'm supposed to stay here and you're going to make me a teacher in one of your colleges or something. I didn't have any idea what he was doing. And I said, help me to realize that what you're telling me and also to interpret it correctly. And so then when I opened my eyes, right between my feet there was a little 5 paisa coin, 5 cents in India. And so I picked it up because it was very strange to find a coin right on Swami's steps because they sweep there about 3-4 times a day. And so I was just throwing the coin up in the air, walking back to my room, and then all of a sudden, 5 paisa, 5 could be a date too. And it was coming up the 5th of June, and I'd been there since February. And so I'd been there about over 4 months, and my 90-day excursion fare ticket had expired, and it was a non-endorsable ticket, of course. And I was almost out of money. I think I had $30 left, but that didn't worry me because I knew Swami could materialize money if he wanted to. But so then I was thinking, well, the 5th of June is coming up, so maybe he wants me to go back on the 5th. So the next day I called the airline and I said, do you have any reservation for the 5th of June? And they said, oh, no, we're overbooked. They said, if you want to be on a waiting list. I didn't tell them my ticket was expired. And so I said, no, that's okay. So, but then the 5th of June arrived, and that day Swami was leaving Whitefield and he was going back to Puttaparthi. And so when he leaves, he gives the students Padnamaskar. And I was standing right at the end of the line of the students, and so when he came up to me, I said, Swami, should I leave today? And he didn't say anything. He turned around and he started giving Padnamaskar on the other side. And then I heard, yes, yes, yes. But by that time, you don't know if he's talking to you or to somebody else. But since I heard it, I thought, well, maybe he wants me to go back. So I went to the local airport that day, and I got on the flight to Delhi. And then when I got to this, I think it was KLM I was traveling on, and they were overbooked, and there was about 25 people that didn't get on the flight, and we were all standing around. And so I didn't know how much I was going to have to pay for, trying to renew my ticket, and I didn't have any money. And so then a lady comes out from behind the counter, and she said, now all of you who couldn't fly with us tonight, please give me your tickets, and we're going to endorse them over to Air India so that you can fly into Europe and then get your ongoing flights. And so she took my expired non-endorsable ticket and endorsed it over to Air India. And then I got my boarding pass not only for Schiphol, but also for going back to El Salvador. And so when I got to Europe, I called the company. I said, hey, I'm coming back. Monday I'll see you in the office. I'm going to the office to pick up my last check. And so my boss, he just said, well, okay. He says, we'll talk on Monday. So I get back to the office on Monday, and nobody's sitting at my desk. And all the employees were very happy to see me. And I looked at the results, and they were all much better than when I'm there. And then I called my boss because nobody was in my chair, and I says, well, here I am, and what do you want me to do? And then he says, we've been talking about your case here in New York. He says, and we've decided to give you a 25% wage increase. And I said, what? In good years, I used to get 5% wage increase. 25% wage increase. I almost fell off my chair. And then he said, oh, and the time that you spend in India, we're going to consider it paid vacation. Wow. And then he said, oh, and we've been analyzing the results from last year, and we've decided to give you a bonus. Oh, now here are these people, that all they think about is money, 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 and how to make more money. How could they do this for insubordination? It's impossible. Only the avatar could get in the minds of these people and turn this whole thing around. I mean, it was impossible what happened. Just impossible. And yet that's what happened. I guess because I passed the test, you see, because I believed in Swami's words when he said, I'll tell you when to leave. And I didn't just take off. So the premiums are so great when you do pass one of these tests that it's just unbelievable. His grace is just so much greater, so much grander than we can imagine. But when you're suffering, when you're going through the pain and everything, you just say, oh, please, you don't know what to do. Okay, well, I thank you all very much for listening to me. And if there was any questions or anything, I'll be glad to try to answer. Om Sai Ram.